My name is Jim Monahan, and I'm an AA volunteer on Oahu. This fast and healthy and Ono cooking demonstration will focus on the classic Spanish frittata, which is really the original breakfast skillet. On behalf of our sponsors, Wallow Cafe at Windward Community College, NOAA Senior Services on Maui, and AARP Hawaii, I'd like to thank you for tuning in this evening. I have a few technical things to talk about, and then we'll get on with our show this evening. Let's do a little bit of housekeeping here. You should be seeing this picture on the bottom of your screen. If you're using an iPad, it might be on the top, but you'll see the chat, the raise hand function, and so on. Everybody is currently, whoops, got a loose mouse there. Everybody is currently on mute. So we won't be asking you to speak or say anything, but if you do want to participate in the Q&A, and I know that people are very active with that, please type your questions or your comments in the Q&A section, in the button that says Q&A. Jackie Boland, our Community Outreach Director for AARP Hawaii, will be monitoring the questions and making sure that they do get to the chef. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you may type your questions in the comments there. We won't be using the raise hand command because questions will be submitted in the Q&A. Also, the chat command function won't really be working for regular Q&A. If you have some technical issues that you want to get to the staff, please use that. Use the chat command for that. We have Alice Swift and Dave DeWitt here managing the chat. There are two technical gurus, and we're really glad they're with us tonight to keep this thing around. We're giving away 3 prizes of custom spices from the Uala Leaf Cafe via a random drawing. And if you're chosen, you'll receive a notification from Dave via that private chat. You'll need to confirm your name and email so that we can contact you about where to send your prize. So we'll have 3 lucky winners this evening. Move on to the next slide. You probably know, and if you're unfamiliar with AARP Hawaii, I'd really be surprised that we're a membership organization for people 50 and older. But what we do for everyone under and over 50. We hope that with this series, you can learn some techniques that you can use to build or maintain your healthy lifestyle. That's what it's all about. So let me introduce Chef Daniel Swift to us. As you can see on the slide, Chef Daniel is the Workforce Development Coordinator at Windward Community College, and he works in the areas of hospitality and food and beverage education. He's taught culinary, baking, and pastry hospitality for the last 19 years, and he's leading us through this well-received cooking series. At this point, I'm going to close my mouth and turn it over to the chef. Chef Dan, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate the introduction. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Yes.
All right. Everything's a go. So perfect. Well, welcome back. Today is, well, in terms of fast, healthy, and Ono, it doesn't almost get any faster than a frittata. Many of you may have had this dish before or some variation of it. It's almost, like I said in the outline, like a skillet or like an omelet. It's just a different preparation, generally done in an oven. It can be done on the stove top. It can be done a lot of different ways. So we'll sort of go through those this evening. I was first introduced to this dish. I had the opportunity to study abroad when I was in college, and I went to school in southern France and spent some time in Spain. And in one of the tapas bars that I went into, they had the beautiful little slices of the frittata. And I fell in love with it at that time. My wife and I sold a lot of them in our bakery when we had a bakery in California. We make them at home. We served them for lunch to the students here just yesterday, actually. And we'll tend to make one, let it sit on the counter, and you make it in the morning and have it for breakfast. And then by the end of the day, it tends to be gone because every time I walk by, I cut a little piece off and eat it. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. This one's very, very simple, the one that I put out in the recipe, but is super versatile. And that's another reason I love it. Anything you want to put in it, you can put in it. So the ingredients I have today are not absolutely necessary. You can even change up the flavor profiles and make it more of a, Thai style or a Japanese style, using furikake or sesame oil. Put a little bit of curry in the eggs to add the curry flavor. So it's completely limitless. So the one thing I wanted to point out is just, our focus today is the egg. And in the kitchen, for those of you who cook and those of you who bake, even those that don't cook at all, this is one of the key ingredients for so many things that we make, whether it's simply salt and pepper and scrambled, whether it's a boiled egg, which I love, whether it's boiled and pickled. I love to do that. We boil eggs here a lot. We'll peel them and then we'll put them in pickle brine and let them sit overnight. That makes a wonderful dish as well. But there's a few components that we get from the egg that allow us to do so many things. Of course, we get the protein from it. That's within the egg itself, and primarily in the white. There's quite a bit of fat. So if you're watching your cholesterol or your fat intake, I recommend you just get egg beaters, which is a 99% egg white product and a little bit of egg yolk in it and some coloring. So you can make any dish that calls for eggs much healthier by eliminating that fat and that cholesterol that you get in the yolk. Of course, the shell and then the air pocket, things like that we don't necessarily utilize. There's other elements to an egg, but these are the ones that we tend to use daily in the kitchen and for so many different things. So you can whip it, make it light. You can leave it whole like this and a little bit more dense. It's just super versatile. So that being said, let me look at the ingredients that we're putting into ours today. I kept it, like I said, really, really simple. And what I've done here already is roasted potatoes. I have a tendency to put potatoes in it more often than not, because I grew up in Idaho and we ate a lot of potatoes, and it's a really, really good filler. I almost grabbed some Okinawan sweet potatoes today, or you can use a yam. You can really, like I said, put anything you want into it. If you're trying to eliminate carbs, you don't have to put potatoes or any form of a carbohydrate in this. You just beef up the vegetables. So in this case, you could substitute the potatoes with large pieces of cauliflower, broccoli, anything like that, even tofu if you wanted to. But you'll notice that this particular pan, and this one I just roasted, so you can see the color on there. What I did was I just took a tiny bit of oil, sprayed the bottom of this pan. I put in a little sriracha, actually, tiny bit of salt and pepper, and then I just tossed it and roasted it in the oven. So that is one thing you're going to want to do in advance when you're using potatoes, is you have to cook them prior to making the frittata. Straight up in the saute pan, it could work if you cut them small. You would need to saute them by themselves first. Oftentimes, if I do that, I'll also add a little bit of water and cover it, so it sort of steams them and it'll cook the potato. Remove the lid, allow the steam to escape and reduce, and then add the rest of the ingredients to cook it. So it can be done completely in one skillet, but it's easier if you roast them in advance, like I said here, and you see this nice caramelization. It's cooked all the way through. It's got flavor. It's got the caramelization. It has some crispness. That'll go away in the frittata, but this is what you'd want to do if you're going to do it in advance. And then I'm using just a russet potato for the ones here, but we've also got some of these in the kitchen here, and you can pick these up at the supermarket now. There's all kinds of really interesting little packets of new potatoes, or what we would call red potatoes, but now they have the small ones, which is like a fingerling in the restaurant industry, we call it. Different colors, there's medleys. So if you want to get creative, feel free to utilize one like that. Works great. These would cook a lot quicker. I would cut them in half probably, so that you can get that texture in your pan. But you do, again, want to make sure they're cooked before they go into the dish. So the other ingredients I have here is of course, the eggs. This is a whole egg. Like I said, you can substitute egg beaters, and I tend to use 12 eggs. This saute pan is a little bit larger than 12 inches. I think it's about 13. But the recipe that I wrote and sent out for this is for 4 people, a larger portion. So theoretically, you could actually cut that down. So 12 eggs with all the vegetables, you could probably stretch this out to serve 8 people a nice light lunch or breakfast with a side or whatnot. Today we'll do a salad. So keep that in mind. It's sort of up to you. It's easier to see it in a larger skillet, so I'm going to utilize this one tonight just to show you and talk about a couple different ways to either put the skillet in the oven or do the saute pan. Or do it in the oven in a regular pan. So the vegetables I just have a medley of carrot and peas. We use these a lot here. I actually buy those frozen. They're really nice. They've got a little sweetness to them. They stay fresh. I diced a little red pepper and added it to it. I've got green onions, and I put in a little bit of leek because I had some regular onion, some fresh dill. Jackie Malley gave me a whole bunch of fresh dill. So any herb you want to add to it adds a little bit of extra. And we're not putting any meat or protein in the frittata tonight. Chicken, I had some in the cooler. I could have used that. I could use fish. If I've got the dill, a little bit of salmon would be awesome. Just flash it a little bit at the last moment with the vegetables and then pour in the egg and bake it with the dill, and you'd have this beautiful salmon frittata, which would turn out awesome. So and then I just have this little aluminum pan. I'm using this one because it's, I'm limited in what fits in the toaster oven rather than using the big oven, which is kind of noisy. So we'll tend to use the smaller ones for this oven. This would work perfectly, and this would easily serve 4. So I'll probably have more filling than will actually fit in here, but that's okay. I can just leave it in the pan and finish it in the oven later. All right, so I've got the heat on here, and feel free to ask questions if you have them. I'm just going to saute these items together, and a little bit of olive oil, or this is avocado oil spray. And I did look that up last week. We were talking about some folks were mentioning that the sprays on a nonstick pan, and I recommend you always use a nonstick pan for this. Manufacturer's recommendation is to not use those because it can delete or take away from the ability for the Teflon or the coating to be nonstick. So we looked that up because I'd never heard that. And it depends on whether or not your spray has emulsifiers in it. This one does not, but if it has lecithin is what you're looking for, and that keeps the spray at a consistent mixture inside the can. And that is what builds up and can take away from the nonstick aspect of it. So ironically, lecithin is one of the ingredients in the egg yolk that we use a lot for emulsifying sauces, dressings, and things like that. So it's nice to see that, there's some rationale behind that as well. So I've got a little bit of cheese. Yeah, go ahead.
We did have a question about pans that can go in the oven.
Absolutely.
Not all pans can go in the oven. So can you talk about that for just a moment?
Yeah, I would say whatever pan you are buying, take a look at the recommendation. The only thing you have to worry about, I can't imagine any metal being an issue. The only thing you have to worry about generally is like a rubberized handle. You don't want to put it, this has a rubberized handle here, which I've used this pan up to about 450 and it holds up fine. I don't know what brand this is. Looks like a Calphalon. I think I got it for Christmas. But as long as you don't have something that's going to melt, the metal itself should not be an issue at all, whether it's aluminum, stainless steel. This particular pan is 100% stainless steel. So this could probably go up to 600 degrees, no problem, before it would have an issue in terms of warping or something like that. So this will hold up fine. So normally I would say the only thing you need to worry about is the handle.
And don't some of the nonstick coatings not work in the oven?
Yeah, that's it. You mean in terms of they're recommending not to do it because it might get too hot?
Yeah, I think you have to get a pan that says it's oven safe for that. Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting because if you think about it, on your stove on high, it's going to get hotter than it would in an oven at 350. So I'm not really sure. I'm always a research guy, so I'll go and look that up and have an answer for you next week. But of course, the manufacturers do all the testing. They know what works and what doesn't for their particular items, but I always like to know what the science is behind it. So we figured this spray out last week. I'll figure out the oven thing next week. Maybe its temperature's over 500 or something. And then I'm just sauteing this. Now we know our potatoes are done already. We know that the peas and the carrots are already, those were frozen, so they're already basically cooked. They only need to be slightly warmed up. And that's what I'm doing here, is trying to create some heat. A little caramelization on the onions. If I had some herbs, I would put them in now, because the heat and the oil that is in here being sauteed with the vegetables will draw out the flavor.
And so Dan, if you use cauliflower or broccoli instead of potato, do you need to pre-cook it?
It depends on how big you cut it. I mean, some people eat broccoli and cauliflower raw. You know, the traditional crudité that we all used to see, where you've got celery sticks, carrot sticks, broccoli, cauliflower raw. People eat it like that. So it's just a question of what texture you're looking for when in the finished product. So I would cook it partially, blanch it probably, or roast it to get some caramelization going. Toss it in a little bit of oil, just like the potatoes, and seasoning, and roast it, and you'll end up with more flavor and more layers of flavor in the finished frittata. But it could be raw if you like that crunch. It's going to cook a little bit, but it will be definitely more al dente.
And then Shar is just asking, when you reduce the liquid, is it with the lid off the pan?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if you were to cook your potatoes in your pan on a stove, cut them a little bit smaller, make sure that they're small bite sized. Like I said, these I'd even cut in half. You'd a little bit of oil, you'd saute them to get some color, and then hit it with some water, and then cover it. And probably 5 minutes, and then you remove the cover, and the potatoes, test them, make sure they're cooked all the way through. And if there's any residual liquid, you want to let that evaporate. If there's a little bit in the bottom, it's not going to ruin the frittata, that's for sure. Some people even put liquid in their eggs to mix it up. Okay, so I've got all of the vegetables, the potatoes in here. And I'm on about medium heat here. I'm not going crazy. Even though this is a portable burner, they still tend to get a little bit hot. What I don't want to do is end up, burning or scrambling my eggs too quickly. These are at room temperature, so they'll actually cook kind of quick. But if I were doing this without talking, this would already be in the oven, or I could be finishing it here on the stove. I'm going to add my eggs. A little bit of salt and pepper and a wall of spice here. And then what I do is I let it sit for a minute because the pan's hot, the veggies are hot, and now the egg's cooking. So basically right now we have a skillet of sorts. We could scramble it and whatnot, but I give it, 30 seconds or so, and then I start to work around the outside just to release it. And, theoretically I could cook this all the way in this pan. This particular pan is losing a little bit of its non-stick ability in the center. The sides are still fine, but the bottom's a little lost its gump. That's from scratch pads here in the kitchen if someone washes it. So I keep it moving, and I don't want to cook it all the way. Honestly, you could pour this in right now and just bake it and it would work fine. I just try to expedite it a little bit by drawing the heat that's in the pan out. Cooking the egg about halfway or so, about like that. And then I'll add usually about half of the cheese. This is just a low-fat cheese. You could use ricotta. You could use whatever cheese you want, or you could omit the cheese if you're not interested in having that in there. I tend to find that in the inside, it gives it that sort of like almost pizza texture, so you can get the strings of cheese. And I really enjoy cheese, so I tend to put it inside, and then we'll also put a little bit on top. Any other questions, Jackie, or are you guys good?
We do have a couple. Clarita was just wondering, was that round onions or green onions that you put in the skillet first?
That I had both. I put green onions and round onions in there. But you can do whatever you want. And you can see this stuck a little bit in the center. Let me turn it. It's kind of hard to pour it toward you guys, but I can still loosen it. It'll come off, but it's a little bit scrambled there. But that's all right. Hopefully you can see that it's still a little runny. And I'm surprised that this whole thing fits in there. I tried to gauge that. So that's good. And that's what we want. We want, this could be a glass dish, but make sure you spray it really well, because obviously eggs stick. As a matter of fact, I spent my morning cleaning some pans from yesterday's frittatas that we baked for the students. And then once you have it.
Is the difference between a quiche and a frittata just the lack of crust?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And traditionally a quiche has the raw eggs poured into it. It's not scrambled at all in advance. When I make a quiche, I do the par-baked crust, and I do exactly what I'm doing here. Because it tends to get soggy if you don't, right? It's like a custard pie. So if you pre-bake your crust, it's already crispy and nice. You make your frittata. I'd actually take it a little bit further, or you make your filling, scramble it slightly, and then just pour it in, cheese on top, and just probably 10 to 15 minutes in the oven. You'll maintain the crispness much better on the crust. Because I don't like it, it doesn't tend to bake if you put a really wet custard on top of it.
And then Millie is just asking, did you spray the pan before you threw those eggs in there?
I did, yes. I sprayed it with the avocado spray. Definitely. If you're using a Teflon, some of you may have Teflon baking pans. You probably don't need to. As a matter of fact, when we made these daily in our bakery in LA, we would just leave it in the pan. So this pan this is actually about the size we would do. Do it like that, full of vegetables, fill with eggs in the oven. And when it came out, we'd let it rest a little bit, slide it right onto the plate, cut wedges, and that's how we sold it, exactly like that.
And then Patty's just wondering about your stove. She's asking if it's electric, but it's one of those little gas stoves, right? Yeah,
this is just one of, I think we picked it up at Walmart. They've come a long way. They cook very hot, very convenient. You just buy the canisters. I think we saw these for as low as $1 in town at some shops. It may go upwards of $2 a can, but that just goes inside here. A button on the front will engage it. You close this and you've got a gas stove. It works great. So I'm going to put this in the oven, and you can see it's still a little bit wet. Hopefully it won't overflow too much, because it will rise. It will souffle on us. We'll get some rise on it. And if I were to finish that in the pan, I mean, I just have this one here that's dirty. You would, if you didn't want to use the oven or turn that on in the house, you can actually finish it on the little stove or on your stovetop at home. You just want to lower the heat. And when you get to the scrambled part at about 3/4 of the way cooked, you shut the power off, shut the gas off, sprinkle the cheese on top and put a lid on it, and then just let it set. So the carryover heat will continue to cook the egg. Eggs only need to get to 165 and they're set, they're coagulated. So we're not looking at 350 or 200. You don't want to cook it too hot, too high. It'll dry out your eggs. You want it to be nice and moist. So with a lid on it, you can then, it's not going to caramelize the cheese and look as pretty, but it will cook the frittata all the way through. And it works really, really well. So that's a tip and a trick that can help you out, depending on what you're doing at home. And then normally, this is a kind of a lighter dish. It would be served with, or I tend to serve it I've got one here that's done. And you can see how brown and caramelized and nice that is. Now you wouldn't obviously get that if you were doing it in the skillet and covering it with a lid. You need that direct heat to caramelize the cheese. So it looks basically like almost like a pizza, I guess. And then any plate will work. And if I sprayed it correctly, it should come out relatively easy. I don't have to turn it out. I'm just curious to see if I got it loose. It's still a little hot, but more or less. I don't want to destroy my pan. So always use a good amount of spray. But I think this is going to. And I'm just going to set this on the board, but you can see the beautiful vegetables and stuff on the bottom. The bottom's caramelized. It's got some color to it. It's actually still steaming. This came out about an hour ago. And, you know, this is an 8x8. So I could honestly, depending on the portion size, you know, get up to probably 12 pieces out of it. So it's up to you how you cut it. To me, it looks a little nicer in a round. And then you slide it onto a round plate out of your saute pan, and you can cut wedges. But squares work fine. This particular pan had a little bit of a fluted edge, so it takes on that characteristic as well. And it could be served whole. You could put, if you were going to a luau or a barbecue or something outdoors or a potluck, you could take the whole one. This can be served at room temperature. Theoretically, you have about 4 hours to have this at room temperature, and it keeps you within the guidelines for the health department. So you don't want to do it and leave it sit out for days and days. But honestly, at home, like I said, I'll let it sit out for 24 hours and honestly eat off of it. It's not a problem for me, but I just want to make sure that the guidelines are adhered to. So 4 hours is the magic number for that. And then I'm just going to cut a piece open, and you can see, hopefully, inside the potatoes, the vegetables, all of that. If you had large pieces of broccoli, it would come through really nicely. If you use purple potatoes or yams, that would come through as well. It would look really, really nice. And I'm just going to cut.
Can you hold that up one more time, Dan?
Yeah, of course.
And then, folks, don't forget that you can drag one side of your screen bigger than the other if you put your cursor in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if you got
nice.
that. You got
That's
that.
great. And then Erica was asking, is that what they call tortilla española in Spain?
Tortilla española. Yes, that's correct. I failed Spanish in 7th grade. I'm sorry. I still have the emotional scars from that. But I believe that is correct.
But a lot of times when you see that tortilla española, it's the really thin slice, like a scallop potato type of potato. So if anybody speaks Spanish, tell us what the defining characteristic of that one is. I'm curious. And then Laureen asks, how do you store it? Can you freeze it? Will it keep in the refrigerator for a couple of days?
Absolutely. This will store in the refrigerator for 5 days easily, as long as the temperature is correct. It can be frozen, but anytime you freeze any cooked product, the cells, the water that's inside will expand, and then as it thaws, it bleeds out. So the texture won't be the same. So you can freeze it, it won't hurt it, but it's not as ideal as it is when it's fresh. But in the fridge, and I actually almost pulled out some that was from yesterday, chilled, and I eat it cold. I'll cut a slice because it's, it's egg, it's potatoes, vegetables, it's seasoning, it's everything in there that I like, and it works great for me. So you can store it up to 5 days in the fridge. We keep it at room temperature. It could then be plated and microwaved, or it can be eaten at room temperature, or it can be eaten cold. That's why I love this. It's so versatile, right? So many different options. And traditionally, I'll serve it with a little low-fat sour cream or yogurt on top. I like that. And I usually do a side salad, especially if it's a lunch. So I just have some mixed greens and also some spinach here. I'm gonna just add a couple drops of lemon juice, just fresh lemon juice. You don't need much, a tiny bit of salt and pepper. And then again, the spray. I'm gonna just, rather than pour oil or a dressing, this is just a super simple light vinaigrette, basically.
And we have a question about whether you can use frozen vegetables in it.
Absolutely. The peas and carrots I used tonight were frozen. So whatever your frozen vegetables are that you love, it would work in here. And to be honest, there's so many great blends today, whether it's the ranch style, corn and peppers, or you've got the Asian style vegetables, the kabocha squash. This is a vehicle for any number of vegetables like that. And honestly, also for leftovers. It works great. If you got a little turkey left over from Thanksgiving, cube up some stuffing, you just let your imagination run away with you. There's just so much you can do.
Awesome. And Ingrid looked up tortilla española, and she says online it shows it thick, just like Chef Dan has done it. So thank you, Ingrid, for that. Rebecca is asking, Dan, if you wanted to add meat, do you pan fry the meat before you add it into the eggs?
Yeah, it would be done. I would do it in the pan exactly before the egg. So your meat would take a little bit less time than the potato if you're doing potato as well. So I would have my potato roasted, and then I would caramelize my onions with my, say, chicken or whatever, just in the pan. And once that's like probably halfway cooked, then you could add in your other fresher vegetables just to warm them up, because it will still cook a little bit in the oven. You're going to go over 165. Remember, 160, 165 is all we need, but it'll probably go a little bit higher. So you'd be fine. That's a perfect way to do it. Yeah, absolutely.
And then Chris is asking, can you make mini ones in a cupcake tin? And if yes, would you use a cupcake liner?
You can absolutely do it in a cupcake pan. Cupcake liner, it depends. There's a really wide variety of those today. Some of them are really good, and others are like, you can't even peel a cupcake off of the cupcake liner. So I would be hesitant to do that. I think you'd be better off with a nice spray coating, but they also make small aluminum pans. They look like the shape of a cupcake, and those might work well, because that way that you could then serve it individually. And you also have they come with a little lid that comes on it. So lots of options there, but absolutely get creative and do individual ones. So this can be, in a hotel, you do a full sheet pan. So we'll make the 18 by 26, or you can just make the little individual ones. So absolutely up to you.
And Judy just is asking, she sees you're cooking it in the toaster oven. What temperature and how long are you cooking it in there?
Yeah, great question. This oven is set at 350 right now. I turned it on for an hour just so that it would stay on throughout the show. And it's been in there now for about maybe 15 minutes. Let's actually take a look at it. And then here's just a simple light plated sliced fresh tomato, light salad, and the frittata, which could be vegetarian. Well, theoretically, I mean, without meat. I mean, if you're eating eggs, obviously not, but there's ways to make this healthy, just like we were talking about with the egg beaters and things like that. So this can be a really nice light lunch. It can be a breakfast. Not as much so a dinner, but it's possible at my house anyways. So this is probably about halfway done now. So I would go with this little oven about 30 minutes, just because it's not as strong as like a household type oven.
Excellent. And I think we have no more questions. So Dan, did you have any other things we're demonstrating tonight?
Nope, that was it. I just wanted to show you guys this one. You can see a little bit how it's starting to souffle. It'll come up probably about an inch And yet when you pull it out of the oven, you get really excited. It looks beautiful. It's nice and high, but it will collapse on you and settle back down like this one did. So we're starting to get the caramelization. It'll continue to do that on the outer part. So about another 15 minutes and this one will be done.
Yum. Okay, so, oh, I see we have one more question. Natalie is asking, can I saute veggies frozen or should I thaw them first?
You can do it frozen. Just keep in mind that you're going to get a little bit of moisture, but most of that moisture will come off in the saute pan. Just be careful anytime you have hot oil, obviously in a pan, and you throw something that might have some frost on it, you could run into problems with that. So just be cautious that you're not putting frosty vegetables into a pan with hot oil, because you can end up with a little bit of a fire there.
Good advice. So next week, can you believe next week it's already going to be May 6th? It's crazy. But next week, Dan is going to be demonstrating sweet and savory crepes. So if you're not signed up for that session, you can, of course, visit that address below, https://aarp.cvent.com/HI cooking, and you'll see all the cooking programs. Also, you can navigate through aarp.org/near-me if you want to see it that way. But please be sure to join us next week for sweet and savory crepes. Also, I did just want to let you folks know that AARP is doing a telephone town hall on the weekend of May 8th on gift card scams. We've done a lot of research, and what we're seeing is that more and more fraud is tied to gift card scams. So if you are an AARP member with a landline, you will be receiving a call at 9 a.m. on May 8th in the morning with that teleforum, and you can just press 1 if you want to participate. If you're not an AARP member, but you would like to participate, again, just go to aarp.org/near-me and search for the event, and you can register for it, and we'll give you a call. In that time, 4 people have come up with questions. So if you have to go, feel free to go. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and have Dan take these questions since we have a few more minutes left in the show. So Kay Hunter is asking, what kind of cheese works best, Dan?
What kind of cheese works best? Oh gosh, the one that you like. I mean, I'm sort of I love cheese, all kinds of cheese. Maybe not cottage cheese, honestly, but mozzarella would work great. Cheddar is my favorite, and I like a sharp cheddar with this because it gives it a little bit of that tartness. But goat cheese would work great. Feta cheese would work great. Any kind of what? Pepper jack. My wife said pepper jack, which would be awesome. But yeah, any cheese would work great. If you want that stringy kind of pull from the center, mozzarella is always the best for that.
Okay, and then Carla is asking, how about using hash brown potatoes and line the bottom and pour the egg mix over it?
Oh, I love that idea right there. You're getting super creative. That would almost like kind of a cross between a frittata and a quiche, right? With the hash browns as the crust. That sounds delicious. So what I would do is make sure that they're crisped up first. So if the hash browns could be baked in the dish without the eggs and everything else to get some crispness and brown, and then take it out and add your filling, and then just a few minutes to finish it in the oven.
Okay, and then Jan just wants to know, do you have to bake it? Could you broil it?
The challenge with broil, I wouldn't recommend it, is just the only difference between baking and broiling is that broiling is heat from above. And if the heat from above, it just tends to be like 500 to 600 degrees. So you could do it, but watch it quickly. You're not going to want to leave it in for very long. So take your the egg scramble that's in the pan, take it to about 80%, maybe a little bit more, 85, almost completely done. Pour it into the mold, pat it down quickly, add the cheese, and then really all you're doing is browning the cheese. You're not cooking it at all. Broiling is just too hot a temperature to cook through the frittata. You don't want to burn it.
Okay, and Marilyn is asking, if you are going to use hash browns, how long would you recommend cooking it in the oven?
Yeah, it would depend on the hash brown. I mean, some of them are, I'm assuming you're talking about raw. If they're raw hash browns, you could probably get them done and crisp. Usually they're tossed with a little bit of oil or sprayed with a little bit of oil, some seasoning, spray the pan, pack it in there. I would guess that's going to take 15 to 20 minutes. But what you're looking for is some nice crisp brownness. So there's probably some instructions on there. You could honestly probably hash brown or brown them in a skillet as well, and then just put them in. You just have to think that you want those potatoes to be crispy and cooked. Most hash browns are par cooked anyways, but nobody wants just like soggy hash browns. You want to get some crispness on it, and maybe even put some hash browns on top, mixed equal parts with the cheese. So when you bake it, then you end up getting like a crispy, almost like the green bean casserole at Thanksgiving with the crispy onions on top.
Ooh, yum. If canned hash browns, how long to bake? I've never even heard of canned hash browns.
Canned hash brown, are they cooked already? I don't know.
Marilyn, you got to give us more on that one. But suffice to say, it sounds like if you add hash browns, you might be taking the fast part out of the fast, healthy, and oh no part of this meal. Is that, would you say that, Dan? Is it adding 20 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, if you're, they sell them in a lot of different formats. So if you're getting the raw ones, then yeah, it might take a little bit longer. But we just had some hash brown patties that were actually made out of cauliflower. They were incredibly good. They were just given to us to try. So if you get the hash brown patties that are already done, you could line the pan with that, and that would be quick. But if you want to make a little bit more labor, yeah, you're right, Jackie. It would take a little bit more time.
Okay, well, I was just thinking because David was saying at the very beginning of the show that what he really likes is things that are fast. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We're going to go ahead and wind down. If you have any more questions, you can always email them to me at jboland@aarp.org, and I can forward them to Chef Dan. We hope to see you next week, and we hope you have a fantastic weekend and make something fast, healthy, and oh no. Take care, everybody.
Aloha.